You go to the doctor. They wrap that cuff around your arm. The machine squeezes tighter and tighter, and then they look at the screen and say the number nobody wants to hear. 160, maybe 158, maybe 160 over 95. And in that exact moment, panic hits. You start thinking about strokes, heart attacks, medication, worst case scenarios. But then something else happens. Most people make a decision that sounds smart, disciplined, even heroic. They say, that's it. Monday morning, I'm fixing this. I'm getting up early and I'm going running. And that impulse feels healthy. It feels responsible. It feels like taking control. But if your blood pressure is already high and you have not addressed what is driving it, launching straight into hard cardio can be the wrong move. Exercise is one of the best long-term tools for blood pressure control. But when the pressure is already too high, the first step is not always to go harder. The first step is to stop turning the body into a pressure cooker. Think of your body like a kettle sitting on a stove. The water inside is already boiling. The lid is rattling. Steam is hissing out of the edges. The pressure is building in a closed space, and every second that heat stays high, the system becomes more unstable. Now imagine somebody walks over to that kettle and instead of lowering the flame, they press down harder on the lid. That is what it can be like when you force intensity onto a body that is already overloaded. Your heart is already pushing blood through vessels that may be narrowed, stiff, or under strain. Your nervous system may already be flooding the body with stress signals. Your blood volume may already be expanded from too much sodium. Your tissues may already be demanding more oxygen because of poor sleep, weight gain, and inflammation. Then you add hard effort on top of that and tell the pump to go faster, push harder, surge more. You're not solving the heat. You're not taking pressure out of the system. You are demanding more from a system that is already struggling to contain what is inside. That is why the first move is not blind effort. The first move is to turn down the stove. And here's what makes this so frustrating for so many people. The heat often is not coming from one dramatic cause. It is coming from 3 quiet triggers that most people repeat every day without realizing they are cranking pressure upward from the inside. It is not always some mysterious disease. Sometimes it is the modern lifestyle doing exactly what it was always going to do to the human body. Too little sleep. Too much sodium. Too much excess weight forcing the heart to work against an artificially enlarged system. These do not usually feel dramatic in the moment. Missing sleep feels normal. Salty processed food feels normal. Gradual weight gain feels normal because it happens in slow motion. But blood pressure does not care what feels normal. It responds to chemistry, fluid balance, vessel tension, and workload. And if you understand those 3 hidden triggers, you stop treating the number like a random curse and start seeing the exact knobs you can begin turning down. The first trigger is what I call the sleep battery. Most people think sleep is just rest. They think of it like downtime, like the body powering off for a few hours and then turning back on in the morning. But sleep is not dead time. Sleep is the nightly repair window where your brain recalibrates stress hormones, your blood vessels relax, your heart gets a break from constant stimulation, and the nervous system decides whether the outside world is safe. When you sleep less than 7 hours on a regular basis, the body does not interpret that as a productivity badge. It often interprets it as a threat. The brain starts behaving as if something is wrong. Maybe danger is nearby. Maybe food is scarce. Maybe the environment is unstable. And when the brain thinks you are under threat, it does what it was designed to do. It flips the body into alarm mode. That means more stress signaling, more vascular tension, more internal readiness to fight, flee, or survive. Adults who consistently get less than 7 hours of sleep are more likely to have high blood pressure and other health problems tied to heart risk, which is one reason sleep is not a side issue in this conversation. It is one of the dials on the stove. So picture this. You wake up after 5.5 hours of broken sleep. Maybe you were scrolling late. Maybe you ate late. Maybe stress kept your brain buzzing. Maybe you snore and do not know it. You open your eyes, but your body is not beginning the day from neutral. It is beginning the day from a chemically charged position. Your nervous system is already tense. Your blood vessels may already be more constricted than they should be. Your heart is already being asked to move blood through a tighter network before you have even stood up, before coffee, before traffic, before work. Before a single stressful email hits your phone, people think their high reading starts at the clinic. Sometimes the process started the night before in bed. That is why this matters so much. Because if the first hidden trigger is poor sleep, then the body spends every morning beginning the race already behind, already overstimulated, already under pressure. And then people wonder why the number is high. The better question is, why wouldn't it be? The second trigger is what I call the salt sponge, because this is where the whole picture becomes mechanical. Sodium is not just a flavor issue. It is a fluid issue. It changes how much water your body holds onto, and more retained fluid means more volume moving through the same network of vessels. The World Health Organization recommends that adults keep sodium below 2,000 milligrams per day, which equals less than 5 grams of salt. Yet many people routinely overshoot that without realizing it because sodium hides in processed and packaged foods that do not even taste especially salty. Bread, deli meat, sauces, fast food, frozen meals, pickled foods, sandwiches that look harmless, snack foods you barely remember eating. This is why blood pressure can climb without a person ever touching the salt shaker much at all. The load is baked into the food system. Now think about the sponge image carefully, because this is where people finally understand why sodium matters. A sponge pulls water in and hangs onto it. That is the useful mental model. More sodium inside the body encourages more water retention. More retained water means more fluid in circulation. And more fluid in circulation means more pressure pressing against the walls of the blood vessels. It is simple plumbing. If you run more volume through the same pipe network, the force rises. So when someone eats a diet loaded with sodium all day long, they are not just seasoning food. They are quietly increasing the amount of work the cardiovascular system has to do to carry that extra fluid. That pressure is not imaginary. It is mechanical. It is real. And because it builds slowly, people get used to it the same way they get used to a backpack that keeps getting heavier one book at a time. You do not notice the exact moment it became too much. You only notice when your body finally tells you the truth through a number on a screen. This is why reading labels matters more than motivation speeches. If you're looking at packaged bread, deli meats, canned foods, or convenience meals and the sodium is over 400 milligrams per serving, that food deserves a second look, especially when you know you're going to eat more than one serving. The problem is never just one dramatic salty meal. The problem is the drip, drip, drip of hidden sodium from breakfast through dinner. A sandwich at noon, packaged snacks in the afternoon, sauce at dinner, bread on the side, soup from a can, cold cuts in the fridge. This is how pressure builds invisibly. And the fix is not to make life miserable with tasteless food. A smarter move for many people is cutting back on high sodium processed foods, and if a clinician says it is appropriate, using a lower sodium salt substitute or potassium-based salt substitute, because potassium can help the body counter sodium's effect and support lower blood pressure. But this comes with an important warning. Salt substitutes are not for everybody. If you have kidney disease, certain heart conditions, or take medications that affect potassium, you need to ask your clinician first. That is not a minor footnote. That matters. The third trigger is what I call the 5-story heart. This is the one people feel emotionally because it is not really about appearance. It is about workload. Imagine your heart as a pump in the basement of a building, pushing water up to the roof. In a 5-story building, that is a manageable job. The pump turns on, pressure rises to the level needed, and the water gets where it needs to go. Now imagine somebody quietly adds more floors to that building. Not overnight. One floor this year, another floor next year, another after that. Eventually, the pump is no longer serving 5 stories. It is serving 10, or 12, or 15. That is what excess body weight can do to the cardiovascular system. More tissue means more blood vessels to service, more distance to cover, more metabolic demand, more total work for the pump. So the heart adapts the only way it can. It pushes harder. The pressure rises. The system strains. And because the added floors arrived slowly, people forget that the pump has been compensating the entire time. This is why weight loss affects blood pressure so reliably. Not because of magic, not because of internet mythology. Because when excess weight comes down, the system gets easier to run. The pump no longer has to force blood through such an expanded demand network. Mayo Clinic notes that blood pressure may fall by about 1 millimeter chast for each kilogram, roughly 2.2 pounds lost. And in some people, the effect can be even greater. That means losing around 20 pounds can make a meaningful difference, often enough to move the number by several points. You are not just getting lighter. You are removing floors from the building. You are shrinking the job description of the heart. You are reducing how much pressure the body needs to generate every second just to maintain basic circulation. Once you understand that, weight loss stops sounding cosmetic and starts sounding mechanical. It becomes a pressure reduction strategy. So before you think about some heroic workout plan, before you imagine that one intense burst of effort will rescue the situation, stop and look at the stove. Look at the 3 places the heat is coming from. The sleep battery that never fully recharged, the salt sponge that kept pulling water into the system, the extra floors that turned your heart into an overworked basement pump. This is how blood pressure climbs in real life. Quietly, repeatedly, logically. And the good news hidden inside that truth is that if these are the triggers, these are also the levers. You do not have to guess where to begin. You begin by lowering the heat. You begin at night with sleep. You begin at the table with sodium. You begin on the scale with the understanding that every pound you lose is not just a number. It is less force required from the pump that keeps you alive. Then, once the system is calmer, once the kettle is no longer rattling on a full flame, you can build from there in a smarter, safer way. And that is where the next step comes in. Because once you have turned down the stove, there's a simple 2-minute move that can help you start taking pressure out of the system immediately. Now that we have turned down the stove, now that we have started looking at the hidden heat sources instead of just panicking at the number, we can finally talk about the biological secret that makes this entire approach different from the usual advice people hear. Because most blood pressure conversations stop at vague instructions. Eat better, stress less, move more, lose weight. And yes, those things matter. They matter a lot. But what almost nobody explains is the actual molecule inside your body that helps determine whether your blood vessels stay tight and resistant or relaxed and open. That molecule is nitric oxide. And once you understand what nitric oxide does, the logic of this entire method stops sounding like a trick and starts sounding like engineering. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule made by the lining of your blood vessels. And one of its key jobs is helping those vessels relax. When that signaling is working well, vessels stay more flexible. Blood moves with less resistance, and the heart does not have to fight so hard to push blood forward. When that signaling is impaired, vessels tend to act stiffer, narrower, and more resistant, and pressure can rise as a result. That does not mean nitric oxide is the only regulator of blood pressure, because blood pressure is controlled by many systems at once. But it is one of the body's most important built-in tools for helping the vascular system stay open and responsive. So think about that for a second in practical terms. If your blood vessels are soft, compliant, and able to relax when blood needs to move through them, your heart does not have to generate as much force to get the job done. But if those same vessels are tense, irritated, stiff, or slow to relax, then every heartbeat is working against more resistance. It is like the difference between pushing water through a wide garden hose versus trying to force it through a narrow, rigid tube. The pump may be the same, but the effort required is completely different. That is why this matters so much. You're not just trying to lower a number on a screen. You are trying to change the behavior of the vessel wall itself. You're trying to make the system more cooperative. And nitric oxide is one of the body's built-in ways of doing exactly that. It tells the smooth muscle in the blood vessel wall to relax, which helps the vessel widen and reduces resistance. That is why anything that supports healthier nitric oxide signaling immediately becomes interesting in a blood pressure conversation. And this is where the story gets fascinating. Because when people think about exercise and blood pressure, they usually only picture the obvious forms. Running, cycling, treadmills, long walks, maybe weights. They imagine sweat, movement, impact, breathing hard, and pushing through discomfort. And all of those can absolutely play a valuable role in overall cardiovascular health. But large research reviews comparing different exercise modes have found something that surprises most people. Isometric exercise training, where you tense muscles without really moving the joint much, has shown especially strong effects for reducing resting blood pressure. That does not mean running is useless or cycling is outdated or strength training does nothing. It means this quieter, more overlooked style of muscular effort has turned out to be remarkably effective in blood pressure research. Static wall sits, hand grip holds, sustained contractions. These are not flashy. They do not look impressive on social media. But sometimes the most powerful physiological tools are the least dramatic from the outside. Now let's slow down and understand why. Because once you see the mechanism, you never forget it. Imagine a dam holding back a huge body of water. On one side, pressure is building. The gates are closed, flow is restricted, everything is being held under tension. Then suddenly, the floodgates open. Water surges through with force, speed, and volume. That is the picture I want in your mind when you think about what happens during an isometric hold. When you tense a muscle and keep it tense, the muscle fibers press inward and compress the blood vessels running through that area. Blood flow through the working muscle is temporarily reduced. The muscle is under tension, the vessels are partially squeezed, and the area is effectively holding pressure. Then the moment you release that contraction, those compressed vessels reopen, blood rushes back in, and the tissue gets a rebound of flow. That surge of reperfusion creates a strong signal to the vessel lining, and that is one reason researchers believe isometric training can be so effective at improving vascular function and lowering resting blood pressure over time. The body keeps practicing this sequence of controlled compression followed by release, compression followed by release, and the vessels appear to adapt in a beneficial way. That is the floodgate idea. During the hold, you are not chasing motion, you are creating controlled internal pressure in a very specific region. Then, when you relax, the body responds. The blood rushes back through. The vessel walls experience that change in shear and flow. The system gets a signal. It is not magic. It is not a detox fantasy. It is a mechanical and biological response. And that is why I love this so much as a teaching tool, because it gives people a way to understand that the body is not just a passive machine that randomly breaks. The body is responsive. The blood vessel wall is responsive. The nervous system is responsive. The circulation changes based on what you make it experience repeatedly. If all day, every day, your body experiences poor sleep, excess sodium, excess weight, chronic stress, and no deliberate recovery signals, the vessels adapt one way. If, on the other hand, you begin giving the body short, controlled signals that teach the vascular system to respond better, relax better, and recover better, it can begin adapting in a different direction. So now we come to the first exercise, and I want you to treat this seriously precisely because it looks so simple. This is the isometric hand grip. No gym, no treadmill, no expensive machine required. You can do it with a hand gripper, a tennis ball, a rolled up sock, a small towel, a stress ball, even an apple-sized object that gives your hand something to close around. The goal is not to crush the object. The goal is not to prove strength. The goal is not to turn your face red and grit your teeth. The goal is to create a steady, controlled contraction at a moderate level and hold it there. That is what makes this work. Not aggression. Control. So right now, if you are seated somewhere safe and comfortable, pick up something you can squeeze in one hand. Sit back in your chair. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Put both feet flat on the floor if you can. This is not a battle posture. This is a calm, deliberate posture. We are not trying to spike pressure with strain. We are trying to create a clean, measured muscular hold, while the rest of the body stays as relaxed as possible. Now bring the object into your right hand. Before you squeeze, I want you to understand the rule that makes this effective and safe. Aim for about 30% of your maximum effort. Not full force, not shaking effort, not the hardest grip you can produce, about 30%. Think of it like a firm, confident handshake from someone composed and steady. Strong enough that you clearly feel the hand working, but not so intense that your knuckles go white, your forearm cramps, or your breath locks up. If you squeeze too hard, most people start bracing the neck, tightening the face, shrugging the shoulders, and holding their breath. That is exactly what we do not want. This is supposed to be calm tension, not panic tension. So find that middle zone, firm, steady, manageable. Once you have it, hold it there. As you hold, pay attention to the rest of your body. Your right hand is working, yes. Your forearm is working, yes. But your shoulders should stay dropped. Your chest should stay soft. Your face should stay relaxed. And most importantly, keep breathing. In through the nose if that feels natural. Out through the mouth if that helps you stay calm. Do not lock your breath. Do not brace your whole torso. Just breathe normally. If you need a rhythm, use this. In for 4 seconds, out for 6. Not because that exact count is magical, but because the longer exhale helps many people avoid turning the hold into a stress event. You should feel effort in the gripping muscles, but you should also feel that the rest of you is quiet. That combination matters. Local muscular tension, global calm, that is the sweet spot. You're going to stay here for 2 full minutes, and that is where the real challenge begins, because the mind always wants novelty. After 20 seconds, people start wondering whether they are doing enough. After 40 seconds, they want to squeeze harder. After a minute, they want to stop, readjust, or rush. But the power of this exercise is in the sustained hold. This is not about drama. This is about duration. This is about telling the muscle, the blood vessels, and the nervous system to stay in a controlled pattern long enough for the body to actually register the signal. So if your mind starts wandering, bring it back to 3 things. Steady grip, low shoulders, calm breathing. Steady grip, low shoulders, calm breathing. You're not trying to dominate the exercise. You are trying to stay with it. Now imagine what is happening under the surface. The muscles in the forearm are staying engaged. The small vessels in that working region are under compression. Flow is being challenged in a controlled way, and your body is preparing for what happens when you release. This is the dam phase. This is the gate closed phase. This is the held tension phase. Nothing flashy is happening on the outside, which is exactly why people underestimate it. But internally, the body is experiencing a very distinct condition, and when that condition is repeated over time, it appears to help improve resting blood pressure. That is the beauty of it. Quiet on the outside, specific on the inside. Now, if you are nearing the end of those 2 minutes, stay disciplined all the way through. Do not suddenly clench harder just because the finish line is close. Do not throw your shoulder into it. Keep the same moderate grip, same breathing, same calm posture. And then, when the 2 minutes are up, release slowly. Do not snap open. Just let the hand relax. Let the fingers uncurl. Feel the difference. That easing, that return, that rebound of circulation into the hand and forearm. That is the floodgate phase. That is the release. That is the moment where the vessels reopen and flow comes surging back through the area. And that repeated pattern of hold and release is what makes this form of training so interesting for blood pressure. After that set, rest briefly. Let the arm hang loose. Shake out the hand if you want. Keep breathing normally. Then repeat the same process with the left hand. Same position, same 30% effort, same 2-minute hold, same calm shoulders, same steady breath. Once you have done 1 set per hand, rest, and then go back again so that the total becomes 4 sets altogether. 2 on the right, 2 on the left. That structure is simple enough that most people can actually stick to it, and that is one of the biggest advantages here. You do not need a perfect schedule. You do not need a special room. You can do it while sitting in a chair during a break, while watching television, during quiet time in the evening, even during commercial breaks, like an invisible form of vascular training that fits into normal life. And that may be the most important point of all. The best blood pressure intervention is not the one that sounds the most hardcore. It is the one a real human being can repeat, quietly, consistently, safely. This hand grip hold is not meant to replace your doctor. And it is not a substitute for medication if medication is needed. It is one tool. A powerful one, yes, and a surprisingly overlooked one, but still one tool inside a bigger strategy that includes sleep, sodium control, weight reduction, regular activity, and medical care when appropriate. If someone has chest pain, feels faint, has symptoms during exercise, or has very high or uncontrolled blood pressure, they should get medical advice before trying a new routine. But for many people, this is the first time they realize there is a way to work with the blood vessels directly without needing a treadmill, without needing to get drenched in sweat, and without turning every health change into a punishment. So this is the secret. Not a miracle pill, not a mystery hack, not some exotic ritual. A molecule your body already uses, a signal your vessels already understand, a pattern of tension and release that the cardiovascular system can adapt to. Nitric oxide helps blood vessels relax. Isometric training appears to be one of the most effective exercise modes for lowering resting blood pressure in the research. And the hand grip hold gives you a simple way to begin practicing that response right where you are. You are no longer just staring at the number and hoping it changes. You are giving the system a reason to change. And once you feel how simple that first exercise is, the next step becomes even more exciting. Because there's a second movement that recruits even more muscle, creates an even bigger vascular demand, and can turn your own body weight into a blood pressure tool. The hand grip hold is where most people first realize that blood pressure training does not have to look dramatic to be effective. A small object in the hand, a controlled squeeze, a quiet 2-minute hold, and already the body begins learning a different vascular pattern. But now we move to something even more powerful, because the forearm is useful, yes, but it is still a small muscle group. The thighs are different. The muscles of the upper leg are among the largest and most metabolically demanding muscles in the entire body. That matters because bigger muscles mean a bigger vascular bed, more blood vessels feeding the area, more tissue demanding circulation, and potentially a larger hemodynamic effect when you create a controlled isometric hold there. In simple terms, if the hand grip is a focused signal, the thigh hold is a much larger signal. More muscle under tension means a larger region where blood flow is being challenged and then restored, and that is exactly why lower body isometric work can feel like an upgrade in this process. It is the same principle, just applied to a larger engine. The goal is still not to create a violent effort. The goal is to create a controlled contraction in a much bigger area, so the body experiences a stronger but still manageable vascular training effect. Exercise research and cardiovascular reviews support the broader idea that exercise can improve vascular responsiveness, and recent meta-analyses have found isometric training especially effective for reducing resting blood pressure. Now, I want you to picture the plumbing of the body again, because this is where the logic becomes obvious. In the forearm, you have a relatively small amount of working muscle and a relatively smaller network of vessels being compressed during the hold. In the thighs, you are dealing with a much larger system. These muscles are built to move and support the entire body. They are thick, dense, powerful, and heavily supplied with blood. So when you create tension there without moving, you are not just making the muscles work harder. You're creating a larger regional demand on circulation. That means the dam and floodgate effect we talked about earlier can become more pronounced simply because the area involved is bigger. More tissue under controlled tension means a stronger contrast between the hold phase and the release phase. The body has to respond to a larger event. That is why this next exercise matters so much. It takes the exact same hidden principle that made the hand grip interesting and scales it into a bigger part of the body, where the cardiovascular signal can be even more meaningful. But precisely because it is bigger, the rules become even more important. This is not about trying to overpower the exercise. It is about staying precise, staying calm, and staying in control from the first second to the last. So here's the setup, and I want it done carefully because the position matters. Sit in a sturdy chair, not something soft and unstable that lets you sink backward or twist around. Put your back firmly against the backrest so your torso is supported. Let your shoulders relax downward. Keep your head in a neutral position. Both feet begin on the floor. We want the body organized and stable before any effort starts. This is not an exercise where you should be leaning forward, bracing your entire body, or turning it into a wrestling match. The more stable the posture, the easier it is to put the work exactly where it belongs. Now extend your right leg slightly forward, not rigidly straight and not snapped into a locked knee. Just slightly forward, enough that the leg is active but the joint still feels protected and soft. That detail matters because locking the knee turns the position into something harsher on the joint and less controlled in the muscle. We want muscular tension, not joint strain. Once the right leg is set, lift the left heel and place it gently over the top of the right ankle area so that one leg can push against the other. You are building your own resistance using your own body. No machine, no band, no weight stack, just one leg working against the other in a controlled contest. Now here is the action. And this is the part people need to hear twice, because if they rush it, they miss the point. You're going to push up with the right leg while at the same time pressing down with the left leg. In other words, the right side is trying to lift and the left side is trying to stop it. You are essentially fighting yourself, but in a measured way. This creates an isometric effort in the thigh muscles without the leg actually moving much. That almost no movement piece is important. The goal is not to kick upward. The goal is not to bounce. The goal is not to shake the chair. The goal is to generate a steady internal force between the two legs so the thigh muscles turn on and stay on. And just like the hand grip exercise, you do not want maximum effort. Aim for about 30% to 40% resistance. Strong enough that you clearly feel the thighs engage. Strong enough that you know you're working. But not so hard that your entire face tightens, your breath stops, or your body starts trembling violently. Think of it as controlled opposition. One leg says up, the other leg says down, and both agree to hold that tension right in the middle. And now we come to the most dangerous mistake in this entire section. The mistake that can turn a useful exercise into the exact opposite of what you want. People hold their breath. The moment humans push against resistance, there's a strong natural temptation to lock the breath, brace the ribcage, squeeze the face, and bear down. That reaction is common, but it is not safe here. The American Heart Association specifically warns that holding your breath during exercise can raise blood pressure. In resistance-style effort, especially isometric effort, breath holding and hard straining can produce abrupt pressor responses, meaning blood pressure can spike sharply in the moment. That is the opposite of the calm vascular training signal we are trying to create. So if there is one rule you treat like law in this exercise, it is this. Never hold your breath. Not for 5 seconds. Not for the hard part. Not near the finish. Not at all. The entire value of the exercise depends on keeping the muscular tension local and the breathing calm. If the breathing collapses, the exercise changes character completely. So as you begin the hold, I want you to monitor your body in layers. First layer, the thighs are working. Good. Second layer, the rest of the body stays quieter. Shoulders down, jaw loose, hands relaxed. Third layer, your breathing stays even. In through the nose if comfortable, out through the mouth if that helps. Keep it rhythmic, keep it unforced. If you need a pattern, use something simple like a slow inhale and a slightly longer exhale. Not because a precise count is required, but because it stops you from drifting into strain. If at any point you notice that you are turning red, shaking hard, clenching your neck, or making that silent pushing face people make when they strain too much, back off immediately. That is your body telling you the effort is too high. 30 to 40% means sustainable. It means you should feel the work, but you should still be able to breathe and keep control. This is not supposed to look heroic. It is supposed to look boring. Boring is good here. Boring means you're doing it right. Now hold that position for 2 full minutes. And just like before, the challenge is not force. The challenge is patience. The mind will try to trick you. It will tell you to push harder because harder feels more productive. It will tell you to finish early because 2 minutes feels longer when nothing dramatic is happening. It will tell you to brace, rush, and power through. Ignore all of that. Stay with the original plan. Moderate resistance. Even breathing. Quiet upper body. Let the right leg keep trying to rise. Let the left leg keep pressing down. Feel the thighs working against each other like 2 matched forces. Underneath that stillness, a lot is happening. Muscle fibers stay engaged. Local vessels are under compression. Blood flow in the working region is being challenged. This is the larger muscle version of the same floodgate principle. It is a more substantial internal event, precisely because the muscles involved are so much larger than the forearm. And when you keep it controlled, you give the body a cleaner signal to adapt to. As you approach the end of the 2 minutes, this is where many people make the second mistake. They tense even harder because the finish line is close. Don't do that. The last 20 seconds are not a sprint. They are part of the same smooth hold, same effort, same breathing, same calm face, same supported back. Then when the time is up, ease off slowly. Let the opposing force dissolve. Bring the foot back down. Feel that release through the thigh. Feel the difference between held tension and restored ease. That contrast is the point. The release matters as much as the hold. the vessels reopen, flow returns more freely through the area. The body gets that repeated pattern of compression and reperfusion again, now in a much larger muscle bed. Then rest for 1 to 2 minutes before switching sides. Use that rest exactly the way it is intended. Don't jump up, don't rush, don't treat it as dead time. Let the muscles relax, let the breathing stay smooth, let the body settle before you begin the other leg. Then switch the setup. This time the left leg extends slightly forward without locking the knee, and the right heel comes over the top of the left ankle area. Now reverse the pressure. Push up with the left leg and down with the right leg. Same 30% to 40% resistance. Same steady breathing. Same 2-minute hold. Same rule against straining. Once you complete one hold on each side, rest as needed and repeat the sequence so that the total becomes 4 sets altogether, 2 per side. That structure mirrors the hand grip logic, but because the thighs are larger and the effort can feel more demanding, form and breathing become even more important. Some people will discover that the leg version feels far more intense than they expected, even though there's almost no visible movement. That is normal. Large muscles can generate a lot of internal load without dramatic external motion. Respect that. Keep it measured. And remember that consistency beats intensity here. A moderate effort done correctly, repeatedly, and safely is more valuable than one overcooked set done with breath holding and red-faced strain. What makes this second exercise so powerful is not just that it uses larger muscles. It is that it teaches the viewer something new about blood pressure itself. Most people think the only way to help blood pressure is to burn calories, chase sweat, or spend money. But here they are, sitting in a chair using nothing but their own body, creating a targeted isometric challenge in the biggest muscles of the lower body. No impact. No jumping. No jogging with uncontrolled numbers. No complicated equipment. Just a sturdy chair, a clear position, and an understanding of how the vascular system responds to tension and release. That is what makes this section unique. It reframes exercise from punishment into precision. It tells the viewer that they are not powerless and that their body already contains the machinery needed to change the pressure environment, but only if they use it correctly. And correctly here always means the same 3 things: moderate effort, protected joints, and calm breathing. So now you have 2 tools: the hand grip for a smaller, highly accessible signal, and the seated leg extension resistance hold for a larger, more powerful lower body signal. One works the smaller vessels of the forearm. The other recruits the giant muscles of the thighs, where the circulatory challenge is bigger and the vascular rebound can be more substantial. But both depend on the same core principle: controlled isometric tension followed by release, done without panic, done without maximal strain, and done without ever holding the breath. That last rule is so important because it separates therapeutic control from dangerous effort. The moment the exercise turns into bearing down, you leave the zone we want. So the viewer should walk away from this part, understanding something very simple. Bigger muscles can create a bigger vascular event, but only calm technique makes that event useful. And from here, the next step becomes even more compelling, because once the viewer has learned how to create these pressure-lowering signals on demand, the final part can show them how to turn the whole method into a repeatable daily protocol that fits into real life. Now we come to the heavy artillery. Up to this point, you've already learned 2 ways to create this pressure-lowering signal inside the body. First, the hand grip, where a small muscle group teaches the blood vessels how to respond to controlled tension and release. Then the seated leg resistance hold, where a much larger muscle bed in the thighs creates a bigger vascular event and a stronger training signal. But there is one more exercise that stands above the others in terms of how much attention it has received in the blood pressure research, and it matters because it takes everything we have talked about so far and concentrates it into one brutally simple movement: the wall sit. Not the gym bro version, not a deep squat contest, not a punishment exercise. A controlled, intelligent wall sit done in a way that creates sustained tension through the front of the thighs without turning the whole body into a red-faced straining contest. Large reviews of exercise training for resting blood pressure have found isometric exercise to be especially effective overall, and secondary analyses identified wall squats or wall sits among the most effective individual submodes for lowering systolic blood pressure. That is why this movement deserves to be treated like the closer, the big gun, the most powerful tool in this particular method. But the power of the wall sit is exactly why people mess it up. The second they hear wall sit, they picture some miserable 90-degree leg-burning squat from a sports practice or a boot camp class, and they assume deeper must be better. That is not the instruction here. Forget the ego version. Forget the idea that you need to drop your thighs parallel to the ground and suffer like you are training for a championship. For blood pressure purposes, and especially for people who are not already strong, fit, and experienced with isometric training, all you need is a light half squat. Just enough downward slide to feel clear tension in the front of the thighs. Just enough to recruit those large muscles and hold them under steady load. The point is not to max out the legs. The point is to create a sustainable isometric contraction in a very large muscle group while keeping the rest of the body calm and the breathing steady. That difference is everything. It is what separates a therapeutic signal from an uncontrolled strain. So here's the setup, and I want the viewer to hear it slowly because tiny setup errors turn into huge comfort problems later. Stand with your back flat against a solid wall, not a door that shakes, not a slippery surface, a stable wall. Put your feet about shoulder width apart so you feel balanced and grounded. And walk your heels out roughly 12 to 16 inches from the wall. That distance gives you enough room to slide down slightly without jamming the knees forward or forcing an awkward angle. Keep the head, upper back, and hips in contact with the wall. Let the shoulders stay relaxed instead of creeping upward. Arms should stay at the sides or be crossed lightly over the chest. Do not brace your hands on your knees. The moment people start pushing on their knees, they change the exercise and reduce the clean isometric load through the thighs. The legs are supposed to do the work here, not the hands. Then, slowly, slide down the wall just a little until you feel that firm tension arrive in the front of the thighs. Stop there. That is your position. Not deep, not dramatic, just enough. And once you are in position, this is where the viewer needs coaching, because the wall sit always talks back. The first 20 seconds feel manageable. Then the thighs start speaking, then they start complaining. Then somewhere along the way, the burn arrives, and that burn makes people think something must be wrong. But in this context, that gradual burn is exactly what you would expect, when those big thigh muscles are held under sustained tension. It is the sign that the muscles are loaded, the local circulation is being challenged, and the vascular system is in that controlled dam phase we have been talking about all through this video. The key is that the burn should stay in the zone of controlled discomfort, not sharp pain in the knee joint, not dizziness, not chest pain, not panic. Muscle burn in the front of the thighs during a wall sit is normal. Joint pain, breath holding, or feeling faint is not. That distinction builds trust because it tells the viewer you're not trying to glorify all discomfort. You're teaching them to recognize the right signal and respect the wrong one. Now stay with them in real time. Tell them not to rush. Tell them to let the wall support the posture. Tell them to keep the chin neutral and the shoulders loose. Tell them to check their breathing every few seconds because this is where the most common mistake sneaks back in. As the thighs begin to burn, people instinctively clench their jaw, tighten their chest, and hold their breath without even realizing it. That is the trap. Breath holding during effort can spike blood pressure in the moment, which is the exact opposite of what we want. So the wall sit only works the way we want it to work if the breathing stays even and calm. Inhale gently. Exhale gently. Keep the rib cage moving. Keep the face soft. If they are shaking violently, turning red, or freezing their breath, the depth is too much or the effort is too high. Slide up slightly and make it easier. There is no prize for suffering here. The win is sustained control. And now explain what happens when they come out of it, because that is where the exercise earns its nickname as the heavy artillery. During the hold, those large thigh muscles are compressing a substantial vascular bed. A lot of tissue is under controlled tension. A lot of local vessels are being challenged. Then, when the hold ends and the person stands up slowly, the compression is released and blood flow surges back more freely through one of the largest muscle regions in the body. That is why this version feels like the biggest floodgate release of all. The hand grip is a small localized signal. The seated leg resistance hold is a bigger one. The wall sit is the full lower body statement. It recruits the biggest muscles, creates the largest sustained internal pressure challenge of the three. And that is a major reason wall squat style isometric training performs so well in the research comparisons. But again, the viewer must rise slowly because standing abruptly after a hard isometric hold can make some people feel lightheaded. Control on the way down, control during the hold, control on the way up. The entire method works because it is controlled from beginning to end. If 2 full minutes is too hard at first, say that clearly and professionally. Do not turn the exercise into an all or nothing test. Tell them to start with 1 minute if that is what they can do with calm breathing and good form. Then build gradually. There's nothing magical about forcing an unprepared body to hit 2 minutes on day 1. The adaptation comes from repeating the method consistently, not from one heroic first attempt. That is a powerful trust-building message because it tells the viewer you are not selling bravado. You're selling compliance. You're giving them a version they can actually repeat. Over time, they can extend the hold, but the standard never changes. Moderate depth, steady breathing, no hands on knees, and slow recovery afterward. Research-based public guidance from the American Heart Association also frames isometric resistance as one of the exercise categories that can help reduce blood pressure, with typical weekly prescriptions involving repeated short bouts rather than one giant punishing effort. Now give them the weekly protocol and make it strict because strict rules make people feel safe. Tell them not to do all 3 exercises on the same day. That matters for 2 reasons. First, this is not about stacking stress and hoping more is automatically better. Second, rotating the exercises helps keep the routine simple and sustainable, so make the week clean. Monday, hand grip. Wednesday, seated leg resistance. Friday, wall sit, 3 days, 3 focused sessions. Each one takes roughly 12 to 15 minutes depending on rest periods and how quickly they transition between sets. That schedule is easy enough to remember and spaced out enough to feel manageable for beginners. It also matches the broader evidence base that isometric training done several times per week can lower resting blood pressure. Studies commonly use around 3 weekly sessions rather than daily maximal work. The beauty of that schedule is psychological as much as physiological. It removes negotiation. There is no wondering what to do each day. Monday is hand grip. Wednesday is thighs in the chair. Friday is the wall sit. Done. And now comes the part that separates a serious health educator from someone just chasing views, the medication rule. This is where you build massive trust by telling the truth clearly. If a doctor has prescribed blood pressure medication, the viewer should not stop taking it on their own. Not because the exercises are weak, but because blood pressure is not a game and medication decisions are not guesswork. The American Heart Association says not to stop prescribed blood pressure medicines without talking to a healthcare professional. And UK NHS guidance also warns people not to stop their medication without speaking to a clinician first. That message is not a buzzkill. It is professionalism. It tells the viewer that you care more about their safety than about making the method sound miraculous. Then give them the seatbelt analogy, because this is how the message sticks emotionally. Tell them medication is the seatbelt. You can be the best driver on the road. You can have both hands on the wheel. You can obey every rule. You can sleep better, reduce sodium, lose weight, do your isometric sessions, and still hit a patch of black ice. Maybe that black ice is genetics. Maybe it is sudden severe stress. Maybe it is kidney disease, sleep apnea, another medical condition, or a blood pressure pattern that remains stubborn despite good habits. The seatbelt is there for the moments when lifestyle alone is not enough protection yet. It is not a sign of failure. It is a safeguard. And that framing matters because so many people secretly treat medication like defeat, which makes them reckless. The smarter mindset is this: use every effective tool available. Use the seatbelt. Improve your driving. Make the road safer. Then, if the numbers improve over time, work with your doctor to see whether the treatment plan should be adjusted. But never unclip the seatbelt while the car is still moving. That is also where you explain the hopeful part without making a false promise. By doing these exercises consistently, sleeping better, reducing sodium, and bringing body weight down if needed, some people may be able to improve their readings enough that a clinician later decides to reduce the dose or simplify the medication plan. That is possible. It happens. But the decision belongs in a medical conversation guided by actual blood pressure readings, not by guesswork or impatience. High blood pressure often causes no symptoms at all, which means someone can feel fine while their numbers stay dangerously high. That is one reason self-deciding to stop treatment is so risky. A person may think the problem is gone simply because they do not feel anything, while the actual vascular risk is still sitting there silently. So the final message of the video becomes incredibly strong, because it is no longer just about exercises. It is about a complete mindset. Lower the heat with sleep, sodium control, and weight loss. Use targeted isometric exercises to train the vessels more intelligently. Rotate the method across the week so it stays sustainable. Keep the breathing calm so the exercises remain helpful instead of counterproductive. And respect medication as part of the safety system rather than something to rebel against. That combination is what makes the whole protocol feel credible. It is not anti-doctor. It is not anti-medication. It is not based on hype. It is based on using lifestyle and medical care together in the smartest possible way. And then you can close with the call to action in a way that feels earned instead of cheesy. Tell them, if this video helped you understand blood pressure in a way nobody has explained before, subscribe to True Health Tactics. And share this video with the person in your life who keeps saying, "I'm fine," while walking around with high blood pressure and pretending the number does not matter, because that is the tragedy with hypertension. It is often silent right up until it is not. If this video can get one stubborn person to take the pressure seriously, sleep better, stop flooding their body with sodium, breathe properly during exercise, and finally use a method they can stick to, then it may do far more than entertain. It may buy time, prevent panic, and help someone start lowering the heat before the kettle finally blows.